I feel bad when I talk about it because I'm not making a big enough deal out of it. We're just kind of calmly reporting on it. It's crazy. But David Icke, well, this is a 5-minute segment, long segment coming up after that. He wanted to get into the fact that in many of these radical Muslim countries, if women are unattended, they're fair game to be raped. If the woman then complains, she's executed in Saudi Arabia. So you're basically allowed to rape women in Saudi Arabia. And a lot of these folks are running around Germany, and the left thinks it's cute. They're actually, the mayors are saying, don't wear short skirts, you know, it's your fault. But I mean, can you imagine if a German did this, and the media even spins it and says German men are doing it. But you were getting into the waves of folks being brought into Europe, and we'll show some of the footage of the waves. Millions of people, David Icke.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, why is it happening? I mean, if you research this conspiracy for not very long, you realize that it is like a room of dominoes in a line, and you push one domino down, and that creates the next domino to fall. So we've had this situation in the Middle East where we've had all this bombing and destruction and chaos and catastrophe externally created by the United States, NATO, Britain. And this has forced large numbers of people to leave. And this wave into Europe has of genuine people who deserve our help because of the situation that the West has put them in, has been joined by vast numbers of other people who are not refugees but are seeking to get into Europe. And it's being allowed to happen for this reason. And it's been long planned for this reason. They want a world government, a world central bank, world army, and world currency, etc. And under the world government, they want these super states. They want the European Union, of course, the American Union, the Pacific Union, all these super states under the world government. And these super states are designed not to be countries any longer, but to be broken up into regions, subordinate regions that are easy to control. You've talked about this in relation to the United States and North America, and it's planned for the world. Now, the biggest resistance to the breakup and ending of sovereignty is a sense of national identity, a sense of distinct culture. And what is happening, and has been happening for a long time, I mean, that's just before I mention this, it came out a few years ago that during the Blair administration, came out in documents and insiders speaking out, that they had set out to allow unfettered immigration into Britain, not to help the immigrants. They were pawns in the game, though they didn't realize it, but to, quote, change the face of British society to a point where it would never go back to what it was before.
Well, that's Peter Sutherland. He even wrote in the BBC that Europeans are bad, and this is to end Europeans being homogenous for balkanization purposes.
This is all connected. Now, look at Europe, Alex, and you'll look at a country that has an enormously strong sense of its culture, sense of itself, sense of its uniqueness, sense of its history. And what you're looking at is Germany. And the resistance to the end of Germany, which they want down the line, and the end of the German culture would be absolutely massive if they knew that was going on. And the idea is, not just in Germany, but that's why Germany has been really picked out in this, what's happening.
Stay there. This is Key, sir. You're absolutely on target. Amazing info, davidicke.com. The new book, you can find it there. This is it. Germany runs, basically, and funds all of the EU now. The EU was always designed, in their own words, to implode Europe once it got control and then fold it into a larger world government. By the way, we did a historic big interview with Louis Farrakhan 2 days ago. I'll give you details at the bottom of the hour, detailing when that's going to be released. It will be a big newsmaker. Farrakhan said, quote, he's changed in the interview, too. It's big. But a lot of people are really assessing, reassessing things happening in the world, because everybody can feel that huge change is upon us, some of it good, some of it bad. But if good people don't get involved, evil will triumph in this time of change. David Icke was getting into the fact really deep stuff that's so on target from my research about why they're flooding Europe. Destroy the sovereignty of the countries. They're even telling them the soccer teams can't be named after countries anymore because nationalism itself's bad. Then you bring in groups to break up the country, make it all about ethnic stuff, the opposite of multiculturalism, and then annex the Middle East in the name of controlling the migrant floods and invade more countries. Now, David Icke just went over all that. What comes next after that, David Icke?
Well, I think the other point I want to make is that people have been taken aback, not least Germans, at what Chancellor Merkel was doing. When this great flood of migrants began, she opened the doors to Germany without any question, without any policy, without anything. And people in Germany were like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, what she's doing is this. Chancellor Merkel is a 100% owned and willingly owned asset of this hidden hand. And the reason that she's done what she's done is because the agenda demanded it. And because of that, she has acted and reacted, or hasn't, to what has happened in the way that she has. And the other point, Alex, is again and again, when you study how the hidden hand works, it plays one group of victims or one group of stooges, whatever you want to call them, against another to create the divide and rule. And they see, again, we're back to the dominoes. If this domino goes down, this domino is going to go down, and that means this will happen. If you do A, B will happen.
And they never want you to think like that, but in their own books, they admit they're rigging 20, 30, 50, 100-year plans. So break down the rest of the plan, where this goes from here.
Well, exactly. And so the other point of the migration is they know that certain things are going to happen, because if you get a large number of people into any other, from one culture into another, then you're going to have some very nice people and you're going to have some very unnice people. That's what happens. And as things happen, and we're seeing some of them now, that the hidden hand knew would happen, you're obviously going to get an angry reaction from the population, the German population, and you're going to create conflict, you're going to create resentment, and you're going to create divide and rule conflict in Europe between those who are coming in and those that are already there. And some of the decent people in both groups are going to be caught up in the crossfire. And so the more chaos you can have, order ab chaos, order out of chaos, and the more you can break down a sense of culture, a sense of unique culture, that together justifies a number of things. It justifies a police state to stop the conflict.
That's my next point. Let me interject this, David Icke, because I want you to continue, but this is so important. It's where I was going next. They don't want us to ever think about connecting dots or dominoes, because if we ever have common sense, it's over. They bring in the radical Muslims, they let them attack, and then they say, we're going to take your free speech away across Europe because this happened, and arrest nationalists and arrest Le Pen in a response to them bringing them in, and the same European governments backed destabilizing the Middle East and are involved. So at every level, they're doing it. And then now they bring even more groups. And as we said, when they gave them thousands of Stinger missiles a few years ago, they have articles now in the London Independent going, oh, now they have Stinger missiles from the West, but then it talks about how they're fixing some of the old ones and might make them work.
I love that one. Yeah. That one.
As the cover story for them now shooting down the airliners. I mean, they're literally running it all. Our governments are, and they never get in trouble because none of the media will point out how ridiculous it is. David Icke, sorry, I'm ranting.
It's a script, and there are some journalists who are manipulating in full knowledge of what they're doing, but they're the minority. We're back to the program again. If you don't see how the dots connect, you don't see how the dominoes fall onto the next domino. You can't see that it is pre-planned and has been planned to play out like this for a very, very long time. And you're a journalist, all you can see is dots. You can't see pictures.
Let me expand on that. I've got to interrupt because it's so key. You're absolutely right. I got up this morning, saw the headline, and instantly knew that it was a cover story for the thousands of missiles and that it would talk about them repairing the ones the West gave them. So they make the story about repairing them and make it look like they developed Stinger missiles. But then you read the third paragraph, it admits they've given them the Stinger missiles. I mean, but I didn't even need to read it. I'm so just like you. I'm so used to their lies. I see the headline and I know what the spin's going to be. That's not being a conspiracy theorist. It's knowing how they operate. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, of course, the biggest problem is the coincidence theorist. That's the worst one. It's all a coincidence. I mean, it's a head shaker. But we're back to the lie and the truth. So you've got the lie narrative for what's happening, and you've got to suppress the truth narrative. And this is why the man-child, who is Mark Zuckerberg, and this outrageously censorship-laden organization, Facebook, was caught on a live mic at the UN with who? Chancellor Merkel, talking about suppressing posts that are saying what's happening in Germany because it doesn't fit the narrative. This is the whole point. So if you're Google or your Facebook or any of these organizations who are all strands in the web, ultimately, I mean, if Mark Zuckerberg is the one running Facebook, ultimately, then I live in a bloody igloo. And so you're seeing this suppression of anything that, I mean, I've had many things censored by Facebook, including a posting of a story about Sandy Hook. And it's because if you're challenging the official narrative, you're challenging the lie on which the transformation of society is being justified. This is what's happening, and people should realize this. If it's in the mainstream, it's almost certainly a lie, even though the journalists themselves might not know because they're so ignorant of what's going on. And if things are being censored by Facebook, it's not out of. I mean, when you see some of the things that happen on social media and that are posted, the idea that it's to protect the sensibilities of
no, it's key stuff. Like when I interviewed Navy SEAL families, like within weeks of Benghazi and other things, when I interview key people breaking stuff, it just gets censored and blocked. They're definitely blocking key info that exposes their agenda, as you